As he was ordered, Rubble had taken off for the outskirts of town in his search for Marshall. Along the way, Rubble did his best to resist crying until he separated from the others. When he did, he finally unleashed off to the waterworks. He didn't like seeing anyone else cry. It was bad enough that the youngest out of the group, even the younger than Everest, who had only been a Paw Patrol member for a few weeks, but he didn't really want to be seen as a crybaby. However, this was one moment that he could let go of his desire to look more grown up. Guilt hung his heart around the neck as he wished he could take back what he said about Marshall. He was a great pup and a great Paw Patrol member. By the time he finished crying, he had arrived at Farm Yumi and Al's barn. The recently married couple had agreed to help find Marshall by searching the fields. It had been half an hour since then, and Rubble had been calling out for Marshall without stop, even trying with his communicator tag. Stopping his bulldozer right in front of the farm, Rubble looked around again for any sign of the Dalmatian. Suddenly he gasped with joy upon seeing what looked like a cloud of puffs of what seemed to be black dots between a stack of hay. I only know one Dalmatian that has that look. A joyful, playful, he drove his bulldozer over to the hay pile and used it to move the hay, only to realize that it was just one of the cows instead. Hey, you're not a Dalmatian. You're not even Marshall. The cow rolled away its eyes before looking away. Rubble sighed before dropping the hay back. Well, he's not there. Maybe I should check the other areas. What if he's already long gone from Adventure Bay? The thought of that he could never see his buddy once again made Rubble whimper. I can't believe I said those things to him. Sure, he screws up, but we all do. Heck, I screw up even when I first joined. Okay, Rubble, you can do this, Rubble muttered to himself as he leaned forward from his seat. It had been a week since he had officially joined the Paw Patrol. While he hadn't been sent on missions yet, it still gave him plenty of time to learn how to use the bulldozer that Ryder had given him, a new construction pup. At that moment, he was still getting used to the controls and trying to lift a large hill of sand as practice. Turning his truck, he howled with the engine roaring in as he shouted, Rubble on the double. He pressed his paw down on the gas, only felt his bulldozer headed backwards instead. Gasping as the bulldozer, had realized that the stick was left in reversed, more like Rubble's in trouble. His bulldozer continued to move backwards until it slammed to a tree, nearly knocking the wind out of Rubble. Moaning, he left it turned off and sighed. I am never going to get this down. Hey, Rubble, what's going on? Rubble turned his head to see the Paw Patrol's fire rescue pup, Marshall, walking towards him with a smile on his face. Hey, you trying out the bulldozer Ryder made? How is it working? It works fine. It's just me that is not working right, sighed Rubble, sinking into his chair. Really? Asked Marshall, jumping up and landing near the bulldog. What's wrong? I kept screwing up. I want to be a Paw Patrol member so badly, but every time I try to work on this thing, I just keep forgetting something, the satin pup said. Maybe I'm just not cut for be a construction pup. Hey, don't think of that. If Ryder thinks you're perfect for the team, then I trust him. Plus, everybody does screw up. Even I did when I first started using my fire truck, said Marshall, putting a paw on Rubble's shoulder. What did you do? Marshall blushed and chuckled. Every time I used my ladder, I always used to come down right on my butt, and it got really sore and red, to the point where I could have been named Marshall the Red Butt Pup. Rubble snorted a laugh before laughing out loud, imagining the sight of that thing. That's so funny. Did you get better? Oh yeah, I did, but I still fallen on it occasionally, while getting up a ton of crashes, as well as you know, pointed out Marshall. Like the afternoon when you slipped on Zuma's marbles and slammed your head against Ryder's pizza? Asked Rubble. Yeah, that was worth it for the pepperoni, Marshall said, rubbing his stomach and licking his lips at the memory. The point is we all screw up a bit, but you just need to keep on practicing. You'll be worth it in no time. Okay, let's give it another go, shouted Rubble. He then turned on the bulldozer, and this time remembered to put it on drive. Pressing it forward, Rubble gritted his teeth with determination as he lowered his large blade and began scooping up the sand. Yeah, I did it. The two dogs began to bark with joy, until Marshall gasped, "Wait, Rubble, you forgot to stop the blade." The two watched as the scooper continued going up until it reached the top and tipped the sand over to pour on top of them. The two dogs held their breaths as they were covered in a huge pile of sand headed down. Popping out of it, they both looked at each other and laughed at the sight of themselves. "Hey, when you're done, do you want to watch Apollo the Super Pup with me?" asked Marshall. Rubble tilted his head. "Who's Apollo?" Rubble chucked at the memory, but due to Marshall's word, he did get better at it as time went on, and even just as good as the rest of his friends. Then he whimpered again, and he realized that he had insulted the very first pup who had given him the confidence to be who he was today, calling him a screw-up. But Marshall's helped save the day so many times, even with his screw-ups, yet I yelled at him, all for messing up my favorite cartoon that he introduced me to. A cartoon was just a cartoon. It can be seen again, even on demand, but even a friend was irreplaceable. Vowing to never see another Apollo cartoon until he found Marshall, Rubble continued on his search. Zuma had searched every beach there was in Adventure Bay, but had no luck finding Marshall. None of the people or animals at the beach had seen him either. That only left the ocean nearby to the islands to search for his buddy. Zuma had doubted Marshall was at any of them. Granted, any of the islands could have been a great place to run away, but Marshall would have not known that Zuma could have tracked him down with his hovercraft. Deciding to report in, Zuma hit his communicator tag for Ryder. "Zuma here, no sign of Marshall, but I'm going to try Seal Island to see if any of the nearby ones. I doubt he went there, but we can't leave no place unchecked. Search wherever you can, Zuma. Ryder out." Zuma sighed as he heard everything and turned to his right to see Wally the walrus waving at him, fish in his mouth. "Hey, Wally, have you seen Marshall?" Wally shook his head, but threw the fish out of his mouth and hit Zuma straight in the snout. Zuma shook it off, and Wally caught it again. Thanks anyway, dude." Wally arfed a goodbye as Zuma began to wonder where Marshall had gone. If Marshall had to run away, their words might have been a lot harsher than they mean to be. Zuma didn't hate Marshall. He only really cared about him was a great deal. He was brave and funny, and always willing to be helpful. As the second youngest, he saw all of his peers as his big brothers or sister. Chase was the responsible big brother. Sky was the graceful sister. Rocky was the smarter brother. Rubble was the youngest, despite being younger than Zuma, was a playful little brother, and Marshall was the fun big brother, the kind one who would help you keep you smiling no matter what. And with Ryder acting like a father figure to him, it was like having a family. And we hurt our family by hurting Marshall, thought Zuma. Turning his head, he noticed the rental boat shop that brought Zuma back towards his first mission, where he had just saw how awesome Marshall was. Not to mention how dedicated he was to his duty as a fire pup. Although he had been hoping their first mission of the Paw Patrol would be big, Zuma didn't expect it to be this big. An electrical fire had caused the boat rental shop to catch on fire. The entire team, as they needed to handle it, Marshall took the lead by using his fire truck to spray the water at the building, while Chase kept the growing crowd away from danger. Sky was keeping an eye on things in the air, being mindful of the smoke, while Zuma and Rocky were in charge of making sure that the nearby boats didn't catch on fire. Zuma was surprised on how calm the team was. They had been only operational for a few months, but they were acting like pros. Zuma, only having been around for 2 weeks, couldn't help but be impressed. While Rocky was using his tools to unhook the boats, tying them to the hovercraft, Zuma was ordered to bring them to the other side of the bay, as far away from the fire as possible. "That's the last one, Ryder," Zuma said, calling out to his new owner as he watched Rocky tie the rope to the last of their boat in the harbor. "Great job, Zuma and Rocky. You guys head back there and... Help, help, that's my store!" A voice of a woman. Zuma had activated his screen and saw the tag with a blonde woman talking to Ryder. "That's my shop! Oh my gosh, my son's in there!" Both Zuma and Rocky gasped at the thought of a kid inside a huge fire. Zuma had never seen a fire this big as one before. If a human is in there. "Madame, which floor is your child on?" asked Marshall, running to the view. "Second floor, by the back of the house." Marshall looked to see in deep consideration before a look of determination appeared on his face. Arf! Oxygen mask! A red oxygen mask had settled into Marshall's face as he turned to Ryder. I'm going in, Ryder. I have someone please take the hose and keep it spraying to this shop. Ryder nodded. Okay, Marshall, you head inside and find that child. Be careful. Ready for a rough rescue. Zuma, you and Rocky head back there and help with the fire. Green meats go. Let's dive in. Rocky then jumped back onto the hovercraft as Zuma went at full speed ahead. Along the way, Zuma couldn't help it but worry if Marshall was in over his head. Hey, Rocky, will Marshall be okay? It's Rocky and Marshall, Zuma, said Rocky. Sorry, my speech impediment is something I had to live with, said Zuma. Rocky nodded. Anyway, Marshall will be fine. He's been trained to do that ever since he was born. He'll be okay. Despite his goofiness, he's a good fire pup. Zuma then barked in agreement and soon made it to the closest harbor with the Flames shop close by. Before Zuma could follow Rocky out, an explosion from the shop nearly blew the pups from their paws as a giant fireball shot out in the air. Holy cow, did you see that, dude? Shouted Zuma. Yeah, but Marshall is still in there, shouted Rocky with horror. Pressing his tag, Rocky called out, Ryder, is Marshall okay? I don't know. I'm trying to get in contact with him. Sky, where did you see the explosion come from? Second floor. I could see that fireball all the way up here. Zuma gulped, as if it was that big. It meant Marshall and the child were... Marshall here. I'm okay. Both Zuma and Rocky signed relief upon hearing their teammate's voice. Then Ryder spoke. Marshall, what happened? It's my fault. I had to dodge a falling piece of wood, but I knocked over a gas can and the explosion blocked my exit. But I found the kid, he's okay, but we need to find a way out before we run out of air. Do you see a way out? Asked Ryder. There was a brief pause for a moment before Marshall answered, Yeah, I think I have a way, but I'll need Zuma's help. What do you need me for help, Marshall? Asked Zuma. Marshall giggled. Sorry, still getting used to my hearing the name sounding like that. Anyway, there is a window in the kid's room right over near the water. We could jump and Zuma can bring us to land. Okay, that sounds like a plan. You hear that, Zuma? Asked Ryder. On my way, shouted Zuma, as he turned over to his hovercraft back on and made it to the shore. Although the flames imitated him, Zuma wasn't going to be a scary pup. When he and his friends needed him, he reached out for several rental where the flames haven't touched yet. Yet the window where Marshall was talking about. Tapping his communicator, Zuma said, Marshall, I'm here. Great, watch out, Arf axe. The sound of the window smashing alerted Zuma to the window, where he saw a red axe smashed up, giving Marshall a clear path for the water. The kid, the blonde boy, who had been around 7 years old, was right beside him. Getting the idea, Zuma crawled off, Arf, boy! The front of the Hoover cart opened up and the shut out for the boy bayou and the line into the water. Marshall, have the kid jump into the boy. Good idea, Zuma. We're gonna jump. 3, 2, 1, shouted Marshall as he and the kid jumped. The kid screamed a bit but managed to land perfectly on the bow, while Marshall splashed into the water next to him. Spitting out water, Marshall pushed the kid onto the hovercraft, where he climbed in. Thanks for rescuing me. Can I get to my mom now? Asked the kid. Sure thing, little dude, said Zuma, with a smile before turning to Marshall, who shook himself dry. Dude, that was awesome. Thanks, Marshall said with a smile. He tapped on his tag. Marshall here. We got a kid, Ryder. We're coming to bring him back to his mommy. Great work, pups. See you soon. Glad to see you're still in one piece. I thought you were going to break your promise for a second there, Chase said, trying to sound professional. But Zuma could only detect a hint of worry. Marshall chuckled. Don't worry, Chase. I never break my promises. Marshall, out. What promise are you talking about? Asked Zuma. Marshall then turned to Zuma and said, nothing. Just something we did when we were younger. Let's get back to shore. I got a fire pup to put out. You're still up for a movie? Aren't you tired? Asked Zuma. Is the fire still burning? Asked Marshall with a grin. Then so am I. He was a hero to that day, thought Zuma, as with a smile he gazed upon the newly repaired shop. Not just that day, but the time he sacrificed his chance to become the world's fastest fire pup, the day he won the basketball game for Adventure Bay, and the day when he saved those little kitties all on his own. Marshall had been a good hero through and though. Marshall wasn't just a fire pup, but he was also the most awesome fire pup ever. Zuma only hoped they never lost him until he continued his way towards Seal Island. Marshall sighed in relief as he came out from behind the tree. Nothing like a pit stop after a long drive, and this time no angry squirrel. He had made a good time so far on his journey to Jake's Mountain and decided to stop for lunch. Reaching into his bag in his truck, he dragged out some dog biscuits and began to eat. Honey flavored, Rubble's favorites. He frowned upon thinking of his former friend and thought about how much fun he and the other pups had to use the challenge to Rubble to eat as much as he could. For a fire pup, he could sure eat a lot and made a lot of messes when he did. Marshall chuckled, thinking of the day Ryder took them to their first public restaurant, and Rubble ended up eating the entire buffet in an hour. Good thing it was all you can eat. Marshall shook his head. No, don't think about them anymore. They just don't want to be your friend, so you don't need to think about them. He packed the food away, finding himself no longer hungry. Maybe I just need a good rest. That's all. He lay on the grass and closed his eyes, hoping to get some Z's before hitting the road again. It was actually kind of nice to be sleeping in the wilderness instead of the lookout. No sound of Ryder or the other pups doing what they were doing, not even Zuma snoring beside him. The two of them curling up next to each other in case they had bad dreams. Zuma always used to have one of those each time the team slept next to him in his first weeks at the lookout. Marshall began to slowly lose focus and fell into a good sleep. He never noticed a tear dripping down from his cheek.